It was the summer of 2015, just after I'd graduated high school. I lived in a small rural town in Illinois where there isn't much to do after dark. That year, a rumor started going around about an old traveling carnival that used to set up on a farmer's land about 5 miles outside town, Miller-Uck's farm. The story was that the owner went bankrupt in the early 2000s, packed up, and left half his equipment behind. Every generation of kids heard about it, but hardly anyone had ever actually been there. Most people said the place was fenced off and crawling with snakes. But one July night, my two best friends, Eric and Dylan, convinced me to finally check it out. We left around 10 p.m. with flashlights, a backpack, and that teenage feeling that nothing bad could really happen to us. The road to the farm was long and unpaved, lined with soybean fields that looked silver under the moon. When we reached the gate, the chain was still there, but the lock was broken. I remember the smell first. Rust, dirt, and something faintly sweet, like old candy left in the sun. Beyond the gate was a wide clearing filled with weeds and half-collapsed trailers. Faded signs still hung from them. Cotton candy, guess your weight, ring toss. The weird thing was how quiet it was. No crickets, no wind, just still air and the occasional groan of metal when something shifted. We moved toward what used to be the main tent. The canvas was shredded, but parts of it were still attached, swaying gently. Dylan went in first with his flashlight and said, "Yo, you guys need to see this." Inside were rows of wooden benches facing a small, raised stage. Lying across the stage was a mannequin. At least I thought it was a mannequin. It was wearing a clown costume that had turned gray with dust. The head was propped up awkwardly, wig half gone, mouth cracked in a permanent grin. Eric joked that it looked like Pennywise's grandpa, but I remember feeling something off about the way it was positioned, arms perfectly straight at its sides, like someone had laid it down carefully. We explored a few more tents, the animal cages, a ticket booth, a trailer with carnival posters glued to the wall. Then Dylan found a small metal door on the side of the trailer labeled "Employees Only." Inside was dark and smelled like mildew. We shined our lights and saw rows of old costumes, clown suits, magician capes, top hats, hanging from hooks. One of the suits still had mud on the shoes. While we were looking around, Eric noticed something outside the window. "Hey," he whispered, "did one of you leave a light on?" We looked out. About 50 feet away, near the main tent, a soft red glow flickered. At first, I thought it was a reflection from our flashlights, but the color pulsed like a candle. Then it moved. Someone was walking slowly between the tents, holding a red balloon that glowed faintly in the dark. The figure was tall and thin, wearing something white that shimmered under the moonlight. For a second, I thought maybe another explorer had found the place, but then the balloon stopped moving, and whoever was holding it turned directly toward the trailer we were in. We killed our flashlights instantly. Through the dirty window, we could barely make out the shape now standing completely still, facing us. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Dylan mouthed, "What the hell is that?" Then came a sound I'll never forget. A faint laugh, low, shaky, like someone trying to hold it in. We bolted. We ran out the back of the trailer, through the weeds, tripping over debris. Behind us, we heard footsteps crunching on the gravel, slow but steady, and that same laugh echoing in the open field. When we reached the gate, Eric stopped to catch his breath. He turned around, shining his light once. Standing about 20 yards away was the clown. Real, not a mannequin. Same costume as the one on the stage, but this one's paint was fresh, bright white and red. The balloon was still glowing, casting a red halo across its face. It didn't chase us. It just stood there, head tilted, watching as we fumbled with the chain and sprinted down the dirt road. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. None of us said a word the whole drive home. The next morning, Eric texted a photo he'd taken before we left, one of the carnival posters inside the trailer. It advertised the Miller Brothers Traveling Show, summer 1999. The main act listed was Benny the Laughing Clown. But here's the part that still gives me chills. At the bottom of the poster was a faded note written in marker, barely readable, but when I zoomed in I could make out the words, "Do not bury. He wakes up when it's quiet. We never went back. A month later, the whole area caught fire during a thunderstorm. The news said lightning hit one of the trailers and it burned to the ground. But the firefighter quoted in the article said something strange. He mentioned that when they arrived, there were balloons scattered across the field. No one ever figured out where they came from. I used to live in a quiet neighborhood in Indiana, the kind of place where everyone waved when you drove by and left their doors unlocked at night. I grew up there, so I never really thought about danger. But after what happened in the fall of 2019, I don't think I'll ever feel safe in my own home again. At the time, I was living alone in a small one-story house I'd inherited from my grandmother. It was right near a tree line with no streetlights nearby. My job kept me working late nights, so I usually didn't get home until around midnight. One Thursday night, I remember pulling into the driveway, shutting off my car, and just sitting there for a minute, scrolling through my phone. I noticed my porch light flickering. It did that sometimes. So I made a mental note to replace the bulb. Then I saw something that made me pause. Across the street near the edge of the woods there was a shape standing still. Tall, human-shaped, but with something bright near its head. I squinted, and that's when I saw it more clearly. It was a man wearing a clown mask. I told myself it was probably a prank, maybe some teenager trying to scare people. Still, I grabbed my bag and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. I peeked through the blinds, but he was gone. That night I had trouble sleeping. Every creak of the house felt louder than usual. Around 2 a.m., I heard something that made my stomach twist, the distinct crunch of gravel from my driveway. I turned off my bedside lamp and froze. The sound came again, slower this time, then silence. I got up and walked quietly to the front window. The blinds were half open, and through the small gap I saw the figure again, closer now. The clown mask glowed pale under the moonlight, and I could see a painted red grin stretched across the white face. The man was just standing there at the end of my driveway facing the house. My heart was pounding. I pulled out my phone and called the police, whispering into the receiver. They said they'd send a car to check the area. I waited by the window, barely breathing. The figure didn't move for almost 2 minutes. Then, as if he sensed I was watching, he tilted his head, slowly, and raised one hand to wave. That's when I ducked down and hid behind the couch. A few minutes later, flashing red and blue lights lit up my walls. By the time the police arrived, the man was gone. They checked the area, took my statement, and told me there had been a few similar reports around town. People seeing clowns outside homes, possibly part of a viral prank. I tried to convince myself that's all it was, but 2 nights later, it happened again. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard a soft tapping sound. Not on the front door, but on the window right beside my bed. Tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. I turned my head slowly and saw the faint outline of a face pressed against the glass. The clown mask. The same red grin. I scrambled out of bed and ran for the hallway, heart hammering so hard I could barely think. I grabbed my phone, but when I looked back, the window was empty. I called 911 again, whispering that someone was outside. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I heard movement outside, slow footsteps circling my house. Then something metallic, like a doorknob rattling. "Ma'am, stay inside and do not engage," the dispatcher said. "Officers are on their way." I remember crouching in the kitchen, watching the back door. The rattle stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Every second stretched. Then, a faint squeak. The sound of the back door handle turning again, but this time it opened slightly. I screamed. The dispatcher heard it. I could hear her saying, "Stay with me. Help is coming." The door opened wider, just a few inches, and the beam of a flashlight swept across the floor. But then another voice shouted, "Police!" 2 officers came rushing in. The clown was gone. They searched the yard and found a single thing near the back fence, a dirty, worn-down clown mask with red paint smeared across the mouth area. It wasn't new. It looked old, cracked, like something that had been used many times before. The officers said the latch on my back door had been forced open. They stayed until sunrise, making sure I was okay. A few days later, one of them called to follow up. He told me quietly that they had gotten another report that same night, from a woman 2 streets over. She said someone had tried to open her window too. When she looked outside, she saw a man in a clown suit walking toward the woods. No one was ever caught. I moved out a month later. My new place has cameras, bright lights, and no ground-level windows. But sometimes at night, when the house settles, I still hear that faint tapping sound in my head. Tap, tap, tap. And I still wonder, if I hadn't called the police that second time, would he have come inside?